Have you spent long hours memorizing a bunch of vocabulary words with flashcards? Have you tried different vocabulary apps on your cell phone? How about Post-its everywhere around your house? Do any of these techniques help you remember new words? No, most of the time, they make you feel miserable and depressed. Of that stack of vocabulary cards, how many words will you actually remember? How many of those words will actually be on the TOEFL test on the day you take it? Very few. Don't give up. There's another way to approach vocabulary. Let's talk about it. It's time to do the vocabulary question. The vocabulary question asks us to select an answer choice that has the same meaning as another word or phrase. So here's how we do it. First, take a look at the sentence with that bolded word in it. Then read the sentence before and the sentence after to gather as many contextual clues as you can. Then decide what the word means for yourself. Look at the answer choices, select the choice that matches your definition of the word. Finally, go back, place that word in the sentence, and see if it makes sense. If it does, you've got your correct answer. Let's look at an example. So if we look at our vocabulary question here, it says the word aloofness is closest in meaning to. Now, don't look at your answer choices yet. First, gather context clues. If we look at the sentence before our word aloofness, she remained unconvinced by Carl's argument and continued to ignore him. If we even move one sentence back, she walked away. Sabrina walked away from the PowerPoint presentation. So it seems to me that she's not really liking Carl at this moment, right? She's kind of ignoring him, walking away. So if we now look at the answer choices, A, coldness, seems like Sabrina's being cold. B, seriousness. C, hostility. Or D, rage. Now remember, my context clues are Sabrina walked away and she ignored Carl. The best answer choice that matches that is coldness. She's being cold towards him. Hostility and rage are just too extreme. She's not really that angry. And seriousness doesn't really match this context. So the best answer choice is A, coldness. A lot of times on the TOEFL, we encounter a word that we don't know what the meaning is. So how do we figure out the meaning? What we have to do is go looking for pieces of information around that word that will help us understand what that word means. We call these little pieces of information context clues. So how do we find these context clues? Well, one way is to look for a comma. If our word that we're trying to figure out is right before a comma, then probably we have some information coming after that comma that's going to be helpful to figure out what that word means. Let's look at an example. People may experience serendipity, comma, a pleasant and seemingly destined surprise. Okay, so what is serendipity? Well, if we look right after the comma, a pleasant and seemingly destined surprise. That's exactly what serendipity is. Where else can you find context clues? Well, look for punctuation marks such as the colon, or the semicolon, or the dash. Just like the comma, what comes after this punctuation mark, whether it's the colon, semicolon, or dash, is going to tell us more information about that word that we don't know. So for example, people may experience serendipity, colon, the surprising coincidence that seems both accidental and destined. So what is serendipity? The surprising coincidence that seems both accidental and destined. And we can see the same thing with our semicolon. People may experience serendipity, semicolon. This pleasant phenomenon seems accidental, yet destined. There's our definition of serendipity again. And the same thing with our dash. People may experience serendipity, dash, a fortunate coincidence, dash, frequently over their lifetime. So a fortunate coincidence, there's our definition of serendipity. The words and or signal similarity. So when you see these pop up next to a word that you don't know, chances are after and or after or, that's going to give you more information about the word that you don't know. So for example, people report experiences with serendipity or sudden pleasant coincidences. Sudden pleasant coincidences, that's our definition of serendipity. People report experiences with serendipity and feeling surprised by a coincidence. And there it is, feeling surprised by a coincidence is our definition of serendipity. One of the most common ways on TOEFL that you're going to find the context clue and the definition to the word that you're looking for is through examples. Let's take a look. She was shocked at the serendipity of the moment. She had just been thinking about her old boyfriend, who she hadn't seen in 15 years, when she turned the corner and walked right into him. Oh. Now we have some context clues in this example. She had just thought of her boyfriend, he appeared, and this is really weird. This is a coincidence. So that tells us about our word serendipity. It's something of a coincidence. Another way to figure out the meaning of a word is through words of contrast. So we might not know what our word is, but we have a word like on the other hand, or in contrast, contrarily, but. And if we understand what comes after that, we know that it has to be the opposite of our vocabulary word. So let's take a look. The two brothers were very different. One brother worked hard day and night, but he never had any luck finding work he liked, nor did he make any money. On the other hand, the other brother experienced serendipity in his career. So the opposite of never having any luck is having good luck. Good luck is a synonym of serendipity. Words of contrast may include on the other hand, but, in contrast, contrarily, however, opposed to this, nevertheless, and others. Words of comparison can also help us understand the meaning of a word. So if we look at this example, one sister found the job of her dreams when she happened to sit next to the CEO of the company she wanted to work for on an airplane. After conversing with the CEO, she was hired. The other sister experienced similar serendipity when she accidentally spilled a drink on the famous artist she had always wanted to learn from. After some conversation, she immediately was granted an internship with the artist. So these two sisters have similar experiences. And so they're just happening to be somewhere. One is on the plane, another is just accidentally spilling a drink on the artist she wants to work with. So they're both similar situations. We can understand that it's a positive coincidence or a positive accident that happened to both sisters. Words of comparison may include also, like, similarly, just as, in addition, moreover, furthermore, and others. Another way we can figure out the meaning of a word is the feeling that the word has. So the word might feel positive, it might be a negative word, or it might be neutral. And we can kind of feel out the positive, negative, or neutral depending on the sentence that the word is in. So let's look at this sentence. Sue was overjoyed with this serendipity. Now, there's not a lot of clues here about what serendipity is, but I do know that Sue was overjoyed, and this word joy is something positive. So my guess is that serendipity in this context is something pretty positive. I'd like to talk to you about another way we can figure out the meaning of a word. Okay, so For example, this cookie. Now, if I look up the word cookie in a dictionary, I get what's called a denotation. That's the dictionary definition of this word. And the dictionary definition would tell me something like it's made of certain ingredients, it's something that you can bake, it's something that you can eat, maybe it tastes sweet, right? This is just neutral, general definition of a cookie. But I could have an emotional meaning in a sentence that I use about this cookie. So for example, I could tell you about when I was 5 years old, I used to go to my grandmother's house every Sunday, and she would make me chocolate chip cookies, and they were so delicious. I miss them so much. So now you know the emotional meaning behind the cookie is a positive one, maybe even a kind of homesick one, because I'm really missing these cookies, okay? So that's the emotional meaning. Now, if I were to say it a different way, these cookies are making me so fat, I have to stop eating them. That emotion is really different, right? I do not like this cookie. So the connotation also exists within certain words, and this is something we have to really watch out for on TOEFL, because maybe the answer choice will be a dictionary definition, but in the sentence, how it's being used is a certain emotional meaning that we have to match. So let's see how this works in an example. The man was frugal in his early years, and he was able to save enough money for his dream vacation later on in life. So the context clues here are he was able to save money for a dream vacation. That sounds really good to me, right? That's really positive. Therefore, the word frugal has a positive connotation. It means economical. He doesn't carelessly spend money. If we look at another example, Mr. Scrooge was so stingy, he wouldn't even allow his employee, Bob Cratchit, to put one more log on the fire to warm the cold office. Now our context here is he wouldn't allow, he only let him put one log on, right? This is really negative, okay? This word stingy has a negative connotation. It means economical, the same dictionary definition. However, in this context, Mr. Scrooge is being too economical with his money to the degree that he will not give up one log and makes his employee work in a cold office. That's pretty mean. Let's see how this works on TOEFL. Here's our sentence. Some millennials are choosing a frugal lifestyle by living out of big trucks or RVs as a way to save money. Millennials, young people, are saving money. That sounds pretty positive to me. So I want to find an answer choice here that is positive. The word frugal is closest in meaning to A, stingy. Well, I already know that has a negative connotation. B, tight. Well, to be tight with your money, that means you don't want to spend a lot, but it has a really negative connotation to be too tight with your money. C, thrifty. I don't know. And D, miserly. Miserly. That sounds really negative, right? So stingy, tight, and miserly, they're all negative connotations with this definition, and we want a positive one. So C, thrifty, that's our best selection here. That's our correct answer choice. My advice for the vocabulary question is to always rely on the context clues and never rely on your personal feeling about a word. Okay, so for example, the word popular. What's your feeling about the word popular? A lot of people feel that that word is positive, but it's actually a neutral word. All right, so you have to really rely on the context of the sentence. Let's look at the sentence. There is a popular misconception that tomatoes are vegetables. They are classified as a fruit, and this leads to confusion among many. So a popular misconception, and there's confusion. These things are not good. So the word popular is not positive, and it's not negative either. It's just a neutral word. So always look to the context to fully understand how your vocabulary word is being used. For example, the woman shared her apartment with no one and remained alone for many years. So she shared her apartment with no one, remained alone. The word alone is closest in meaning to, is it A, lonely, or B, solitary? A is incorrect because lonely has a negative connotation. Just as a word in and of itself, lonely is negative. And there's no context clue in this sentence that says the woman was unhappy or experiencing a negative emotion about living by herself. But B, solitary, that's correct. Solitary just means by oneself. All right, this is a neutral word and it matches the neutrality of the word alone. So like the words alone and popular, you might have your own personal feeling about that word, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's true in TOEFL context. So always rely on the context clues in the sentence that's provided in order to make your correct answer choice. All right, and finally, in order to understand a vocab word, we might get a clue from the word itself. So especially for people who come from a Latin-based language, you're going to see some familiar prefixes. These are the words or letters that come at the beginning of a word, or suffixes that come at the end, or even roots of words that you might be already familiar with the meaning. So if we take, for example, the malevolent winds suddenly blew away all of my homework, I might see this prefix mal, M-A-L. This means bad. It always has a negative connotation. And our question is, the word malevolent is closest in meaning to A, benign, B, harmless, C, wicked, D, proficient. Well, I know it's not harmless because it's something bad, right? And benign, actually the prefix there, B-E-N-E, is good. So that's the complete opposite. And proficient really is a good word too, right? P-R-O, proficient. If you're proficient at something, you're pretty good at it. So the one that has the negative meaning is C, wicked. And that's the correct answer choice. Let's talk about traps in the vocabulary question. So the first trap is this answer choice is not mentioned, or it's not related to or not relevant to what's happening in the sentence. We'll just eliminate this trap. Another trap is when the word is the direct opposite of what's really the definition of our vocabulary word. So eliminate this choice. And finally, you might have an answer choice that's partly true, but the usage of that word in that sentence is wrong. It just doesn't match the context of what's going on in that sentence. So let's take a look at how this works. So let's look at our sentence. Sabrina remained in the corner all night with her black dress and sunglasses on, slowly sipping her cocktail. The word sipping is closest in meaning to. Is it A, racing, B, guzzling, C, ingesting, or D, drinking? Well, if you look at A, racing, so there's no mention of a race. It doesn't make sense to race a cocktail. It's just not logical. B, guzzling. Guzzling is the exact opposite of sipping. It means to drink a lot of fluid very quickly. So this is a trap. Get rid of this. C, ingesting. Now this is a trap too, because it is true that Sabrina is ingesting a liquid. However, it's the wrong usage of this word. It's not common to say that you ingest a cocktail. Typically, ingest is a word that is used in the context where something that you do not want to enter the body does enter the body. So the correct choice here is D, drinking. Here's a helpful elimination tip. If you see two vocabulary words in your answer choices that are both synonyms, which means they both have similar meaning, they both can't be right. They both can't be true. You have to cross both of them off. Let's see how this works. So the same sentence, right? Sabrina is sipping her cocktail. The word sipping is closest in meaning to A, consuming, B, eating, C, licking, and D, drinking. Do you see how answer choices A and B are similar? Eating and consuming are very close in meaning. They both can't be correct, so eliminate them both. Now, answer choice C, licking a cocktail, this is not logical in this sentence. Even though Sabrina is a cat, she may lick. She's personified in the story. She acts like a person. So a person would not lick a cocktail. The best choice here is D, drinking. My last piece of advice for you is use the process of elimination. It works. When you look at your answer choices, you might find a word that you don't know the meaning of. But don't eliminate that word right away. Eliminate the words that you know are wrong, okay? And then make your selection.